All right, well, let's bring in Roger Stone. Enough of this goddamn chicanery.
Maybe he likes Sum 41.
I'm sure he does. He's a man of style, a man of presence, a man of pizzazz, a man of the world, a patriot. Roger Stone.
Gentlemen.
Come on in, Roger. Jim may or may not be defecating, so you'll have to give him a moment. But, you know, we all have to empty our bowels at certain times of the day. It happens, doesn't it, Roger?
Too much information.
Well, you know, I just want you to be informed. I don't want you coming in here and feeling like an outsider. You're one of us, after all.
I always feel at home here.
Good, good. Well, welcome. Jim, I informed Roger you may or may not be defecating.
No. I had to make a phone call to a doctor that I was late on my phone call. I'm like, oh shit, I forgot.
He went like this. I assume that means it's the anal cavity is what he's, it's what he's talking about.
Or it's a white supremacist hand sign. I'm not sure which.
He does have a white supremacist doctor.
Oh, the AOK. That's right.
That's right.
That's his bull.
Is it bull?
Yeah, nonsense.
What is the white supremacist hand gesture?
I don't know that they have one, but this comes from Donald J. Trump. He does it when he's speaking. He does it all the time.
He's not a white supremacist?
All the time. Most certainly not.
Good, good. And by the way, I was watching your pronouns. You said they instead of we.
Right.
Credit to you. You are also not a white supremacist.
Most definitely not. I worked for the president, Richard Nixon, who gave us affirmative action, desegregated the public schools, and created the Office of Minority Business Enterprise.
I mean, you have a tattoo of the guy on your back.
I do.
True, right?
Right. His civil rights record is actually quite strong because of the circumstances of his 1968 election, where he had Wallace running to his right and Humphrey running to his left. He finessed the civil rights question in the election. No question about it.
So why does he get...
But then look at the record after 4 years. Pretty good.
Why does he get lumped into this like he's an evil man?
Well, look, Watergate has destroyed any legacy he might have had, but he reached a strategic arms limitation with the Soviets. He ended the Vietnam War. He opens the door to China. He saves Israel unilaterally in the 1973 Yom Kippur War with an airlift of lethal aid when their backs are against the sea. He also makes huge mistakes. The ignominious, failed, racist war on drugs, probably his biggest mistake, taking us off the gold standard.
Well, taping himself was not smart either. And it's weird, like these guys, like when you're taping yourself and you know you're taping yourself, after a while you just forget because you're doing it.
But of course the problem is that both JFK and LBJ taped themselves.
What happened to those tapes?
They remembered they were on tape.
Oh, so that's
why you can hear Lyndon Johnson saying to J. Edgar Hoover, so was anybody going to shoot at me in Dallas? Because he knows it's on tape. He's acting for the tape.
Let me ask you too. Are you surprised that Michael Cohen taped Trump?
Not in the slightest.
You're not.
Isn't that like a huge? We were talking about this on the show. Isn't that like a mega breach of confidentiality?
I think
lawyer-client privilege.
I kind of think in life that people who are dumb and know they're dumb are not a problem. It's the people who are dumb and think they're smart is the problem.
And who are you referring to?
Pointing at both of us.
I'm referring in this case to Michael Cohen, who I've known for 15 years.
Have you known he's dumb for 15 years?
Yes.
How long did it take you to realize it?
Because I've sat in meetings with him and listened to some of the dumb things that he said.
And they're stupid.
How long did it take you to realize he was stupid?
Not very long.
Wow.
I mean, but not only that, but he lied to me on a number of occasions, so I know that he's a liar.
What did he lie to you about?
In 2012, he set up a draft Trump website, told us it had tremendous traffic, and that he had compiled a list of email addresses from that, which would be beneficial down the road if Trump decided to run. I could get my hands on that list. You know why? Because it didn't exist.
Lies.
He was just lying. But taping a client as an attorney, under what circumstances can you tell yourself? I mean, he was obviously doing it to protect himself or what but like, how can you tell yourself that that's okay?
I guess he thought it was clever. I don't know.
Do you think he should be disbarred?
I need to know a lot more about the case. I mean, at this point, we don't know what it is he has on tape. We don't know what it is that he has in his files. He has no way of knowing. I listened to the tape that they released. Incomprehensible.
And it didn't seem
two guys
very dangerous.
Talking in code, and both of them are confused, but Cohen is confusing him even more. It's kind of interesting because John Dean, who was on CNN the other night just before me, you know him. He's the guy who planned, pushed, and then covered up the Watergate break-in and then blamed it on everyone else.
I see.
And I wrote a book on this called Nixon Secrets. Makes a pretty good case. But he published a book which he said were all of the transcribed tapes from the Nixon Watergate White House. So I read his book, and I found out there were 3 conversations missing: March 16th, 17th, and 22nd of 1973. That's because you can hear Dean leading Nixon right into the Watergate cover-up, so he didn't include those. But it sounded very much like the Cohen tape, 2 guys talking past each other. Sir, I need to talk to you about, that thing. Which thing? That thing? No, that other thing. I mean, these guys, it's an absurdity. So and at one point in the tape, Cohen says to Trump, well, I've got to take care of the financing. And Trump says, what financing? What are you talking about?
Did Trump know, you think, that he was being recorded?
I doubt it.
Or did you think he suspected? Maybe a guy like that.
The way he's also talking in code is like,
maybe you prepare yourself to always know that that's a possibility.
I think that he is very savvy about that. I mean, here's somebody, this is why this idea of him having any, lurid activities in Russia are outside the question. He would say to me, always assume you're being watched. If you go abroad, just assume you're being filmed and they're all watching you.
But what if he sends his kid to do it instead?
Again, the meeting at Trump Tower, perfectly legal. What would be the point?
Well, let me ask you this. When we were talking about the meeting, because I want your opinion on what the hell this Rudy Giuliani is doing, because it just seems like the more media appearances he does, the more he's losing his mind. I don't know what he's talking about half the time. It doesn't seem like even Fox News.
He seems befuddled.
He does.
But is that part of the strategy?
Well, I don't agree with your analysis, although he did confuse me on the Michael Cohen thing when he tried to explain it.
Right. He's talking about 2 meetings, 1 meeting, 3 meetings.
Yeah. I thought you said Spider, I'm at the meeting. Yeah, it was not a good job.
So Donald Trump Jr. has a meeting with a woman Russian lawyer at Trump Tower. She meets with the people at Fusion GPS who wrote the phony dossier before the meeting and after the meeting. That's called briefing and debriefing. Question, Miss Velishkaya. Where did you get your visa? Show us your visa. We still don't know where her visa came from. The visa she applied for in New York was denied by the U.S. attorney here, which means somebody in Washington approved her visa. What was she doing in the country? What was she here for, other than to have that meeting? The purpose of the meeting, it appears to me, was to be able to say we had a meeting. Not the substance of the meeting where nothing improper or illegal happens. The meeting turns out to be a waste of time. But the meeting itself is not illegal. The purposes of the meeting, I think, are clearer and clearer.
But why is Giuliani going on TV and talking about a second meeting and like giving all this information that nobody's asking? And it seems like nobody knows what he's talking about.
I think he's been effective on the question of the partisanship of the Mueller enterprise, and he has been realistic about the fact that the president, no client, should sit down for an open-ended interview with a prosecutor when there's the possibility of perjury or obstruction of justice on the table.
Isn't it nuts a little, sorry, Jim, isn't it a little nuts for Giuliani? He said like yesterday he's on TV and he goes, number 1, there was no collusion. Number 2, collusion's not illegal anyway. So you're going like, well, was there no collusion or are you excusing it?
Well, he's right, but the point is he's right on both points. Look, I made the same mistake at one point. On Twitter, I said a meeting with Julian Assange would not be illegal. He's a journalist, and meeting with him is not a crime. Not that I met with him, because I didn't. But
right, that sounds crazy.
But you're allegedly dinner, but
I believe it was dinner, Jim.
And then there was one reporter with the Wall Street Journal who wanted to know, well, could the dinner have taken place via Skype? Well, no, really, actually, if we did that, then he would be at breakfast and I would be at dinner.
That's right, that's true. Yeah,
and it also didn't happen there either. That's the kind of irresponsible, crazy reporting you get from people like Shelby Holliday of the Wall Street Journal.
That's a name. The media is really panicking too. Like the head of the Times is saying that Trump is being, which I think that the media is kind of shooting themselves.
What are they saying?
Just that he's causing a very dangerous environment because he's calling everything fake news. But meanwhile, people are getting their news from Twitter. That's half the reason papers aren't selling.
Discrediting the press.
Yeah,
right,
but you know,
right. as if they're always right and as if they're a perfect arbiter of everything that is. And I think they deserve the criticism. This whole idea, though, that every reporter at the New York Times is biased and every reporter at the Washington Post is biased. It doesn't work that way. There are good reporters there just trying to do their job who are intellectually honest. There are others who have a point of view and it weaves into their reporting.
Isn't that more the editors, though? Don't the editors have the final say? So like the tone of the editor will kind of dictate the tone of the paper?
Exactly which editor at the New York Times is a registered Republican? Could they produce his name, please? The answer will be none.
Right. I see. Well, do you think that, and this, I'm more just playing devil's advocate, but the argument I think with people that think that Trump is discrediting the media is that he announces things like CNN, Washington Post, New York Times as fake news.
Yes.
But Fox News, for example, is like the beacon of truth. Fox News clearly has a bias one way, the same way CNN and New York Times clearly have a bias one way. But Trump seems to like the media that has a bias towards him. No?
I would actually argue if you analyze CNN 24 hours a day, while there are some shows that have a bias towards him, there's plenty of anti-Trump comment there as well.
You're talking about Fox News,
Fox.
You mean? Yeah.
But also Fox is clearly in some kind of transition with the sale of Disney and so on. And with Kimberly Guilfoyle, the single best thing they had going for them, leaving.
Yeah.
So,
now? How did Kristen Davis get dragged into this? She ran for governor a few years ago, or wanted to run, and then she had asked me to run as her lieutenant governor.
Did you do it? Did you say yes or no?
I said no, and I talked about it.
He did think about it. He did think about it.
I did because
we
again,
wanted you. We really wanted you.
Everybody likes to be in the paper, but my manager said you're a comedian and you gotta live and die as a comedian. You can't do something that's a stunt as a comic. You just can't do it. Not that her thing, she might have been sincere, but for me, it wouldn't have been genuine. My manager said that, and they kind of
get a new manager.
No, they like it would have. I probably would have looked back on that one. I shouldn't have.
There'd be pluses and minuses. There'd be advantages and disadvantages. You climb into the arena. You're going to get beat up some. That's the way it is.
But you're known as a guy who loves to live in the headlines.
The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
Right.
Yeah, that is true. Maybe I should have done it.
Roger Stone is not the best guy to go to advice for that comes to doing media stunts because you've never shied away from a media stunt.
It is better to be infamous than never be famous at all.
Right. That was the takeaway I got from the Netflix documentary. Yeah. But now Kristen Davis's name is coming up in this thing, no?
Yeah, yes. It's very disturbing. Lainey Spire, who's with us, has known Kristen for longer than I have.
10 years.
10 years. I met Kristen after the Elliot Spitzer scandal. Kristen Davis was running one of the most successful call girl rings in the world, a very high-end enterprise. She was supplying women for the governor. He denies that. He's lying. And when the whole thing came down, she went to Rikers and he went back to his penthouse and then to CNN to host a show. How is that right? I don't see how that's right. So I persuaded her. I met her on a radio show. I was really impressed because she's not only beautiful, but she's smart as hell and she presents well. And I said, look, I can't think of a better way to demonstrate the inequities in our judicial system between the way men are treated and the way women are treated than run. Use it as a forum to show people the hypocrisy.
Oh, you encouraged her to run.
I encouraged her to run.
Yeah.
And so how do we end up in the place that we're in now?
Well, so she ran for governor. She got kind of screwed in the ballot process because you draw, and she was put on a second page, so hard to find her on the ballot. She handled herself very well in the debate. She debated Andrew Cuomo and the Republican candidate and so on. She's been a friend of mine for a little less than 10 years, I guess. And she's worked for me on and off, mostly doing research, IT stuff, and so on. So last Friday, she got a subpoena from the special counsel's office. And the irony of that is that during the entire year of 2015, she was incarcerated.
Yep.
And during most of 2016, she was pregnant.
And in a halfway house.
She did not come to work for me, although I paid her in December of 2016. It's because it was Christmas and she needed it. She didn't come to work for me until January of 17. So she's not even there through the whole period of the gestation or execution of the Trump campaign.
Now, by the way, I would have done a very poor job as lieutenant governor. I would have done a poor job.
Do you think so? Why?
During the debates, I would have hurt the cause.
Oh. Now, do you think that they're trying to get to her to try to hurt you?
It's hard to say what. Here's what we do know. She doesn't have any knowledge of Russian collusion.
You do?
No, I do not.
Oh, okay.
She doesn't have any knowledge of WikiLeaks collaboration. She doesn't know anything about the advance publication of John Podesta's emails. All of that is nonsense.
Does she know about your conversations with Guccifer?
If she read about them, the conversations that are entirely public and innocuous, those.
What do you think they want with her?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Because they're obviously probably going to her to try to bump somebody else into doing something or to make somebody else concerned.
I feel like they're trying to make Roger concerned.
Yeah. I think it's just a desperate move to get to Roger.
Yeah, I think they're definitely trying to get to Roger.
It's desperate and it's harassment, and she's a single parent trying to make her way. She's opening up a beauty business for the art nails this month, and this whole thing has put her in the rears. You know, she had to get her lawyer, so that's why we started a website and a fundraiser for her called Kristen Davis legalfund.com.
Now, you and Kristen must have been pretty shocked when this started to go down, because it seems like Kristen has kind of been out of that world for a while.
She paid her debt to society. She's remade her life. She's been laying low.
Yeah. Right.
Why does she deserve this? She doesn't know anything of any value.
Right.
This is supposed to be about Russian collusion in the 2016 election. She doesn't know anything about that. Either do I. Yes, she had access to my office. She was working for me on and off for a 10-year period, but not during the relevant period.
So they just want to see, they're just kind of, it's like a fishing expedition. They just want to see, hey, maybe she saw something or said something that can get us more access or something that can
Or
take
they
us
want to
down
make
the road.
Roger sweat by hitting, hitting his friends where it hurts.
Look, she's one hard-boiled lady. She's been through the system, and she's got a pretty good grasp of it. I'm sure she'll do well in her testimony, but I can't even talk to her about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a matter of legality.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not allowed to because it's tampering.
I'm not allowed to, so I can talk to her, but I can't talk to her specifically about her testimony because it could be viewed as, tampering with a witness.
Yeah. And where's the, because this is tough for her financially. Where's the website that people can help her?
It's KristenDavisLegalFund.com.
Yeah, because it's kind of
helping.
We just started it, so
and
hopefully
and there are two I's in Kristen, Kristin, Kristen Davis.
Because it's kind of nuts. It's one thing to watch this whole circus play itself out with all the participants. To me, it seems kind of crazy to watch somebody. It feels like I'm watching somebody get kind of dragged into this circus. That's why I kind of feel for Kristen.
Her legal fees will be a minimum of $15,000, could be $20,000.
Man,
she has to. She's paying a lawyer, $800 an hour.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of scratch.
Who does?
No, I don't know.
And plus, while she's running around doing this, she needs to have child care for her son. She can't be dragging him to Washington and all this stuff.
Her son, who, by the way, is my godson,
and my godson,
and will be president of the United States.
You think the son will be the
Carter?
How old? Not if he has anything to do with you. You're nothing but trouble.
No, I have to live to be 95 so I can elect him.
Now, let me go back to what we were talking about before. We were talking about like the media and everything. Who at Fox News is anti-Trump? You were saying like the same way like I would look at CNN and MSNBC.
Shep Smith comes to mind.
Shep Smith is not a Trump guy.
It almost drips off of him. It's so obvious.
Yeah, but I mean the whole lineup in and around Shep Smith is pretty in favor of Trump. The morning show clearly likes Trump. All the evening shows like
You're
Trump.
right. There are some real journalists there, but
I wanted to ask too about Michael Cohen. Do you think that how is all of this kind of spiraling out of control? Like he was the attorney. How is all of this coming apart?
I think the issue here is about money, as it always is. So Michael Cohen goes out and he hires a blue chip New York law firm to read through every document, to listen to every tape of all this material he has, at who knows, $600 an hour perhaps. So his legal bills, I'm told, have reached $5 million. And he
already?
Yes, and he does not have $5 million, or if he does have it, he's not willing to spend it. So he has gone to the Trumps for assistance, and the Trumps can't help him, even if they were sympathetic. It would look improper. It would be improper. So they can't help him. He never worked for the campaigns. Therefore, he's not eligible to get money from the trust that was set up to help people like Hope Hicks and others who fell into the Mueller, juggernaut path. So he's very angry that he is not getting any help on his legal fees. I think that's his motivation.
Do you think it's a mistake to not give him help? As far as now you've turned this guy against you?
We don't know what he has. If he doesn't have more than what he played in that one tape, for him to say, I was with the president and knew about the Donald Jr. Russian lawyer meeting in advance because I heard it and he said so, but no other corroborating information, no document, no tape. It's just his word. I mean, I don't think that's...
Is the word of a former personal attorney considered higher, or they say, well, he's just trying to, he has other motives?
If a matter involving him ever got to trial, my guess is that the opposing counsel would point to other lies that he's told and therefore, project that this one is too. I just don't think he's all that credible. Look, he wanted very badly to be in the campaign.
But let me ask you, if you said it's about money, under what scenario would he get his legal bills paid for now that he's gone down this road?
No, he's not going to get them paid now. I don't think he was ever going to get them paid because you have to avoid the appearance that you're somehow bribing him.
Okay.
I mean, he has what he has. It's either significant or it is not, but it has driven him into the clutches of Lanny Davis, who, let's face it, hasn't gotten much FaceTime lately, so he's got to be fairly happy. Lanny's not a bad fellow. I bumped into him in the green rooms. He's not a lawyer, not the kind you go to court with. He's a talking head.
Was this one of those things where the government, will the government, if he gives them what they want, pay his legal bills?
No.
They won't?
No.
So he's on the hook for $5 million.
I don't believe it works that way.
Because I'm like, what's his motivation then?
Right.
Like, if it's just angry, now he's making an enemy of the president, it's probably not a smart move. So if he has a financial motivation, how is he going to get financially compensated? What scenario gets him some of that money back?
I can't see any scenario in which, but I'm not an attorney, but I don't believe there's any way to get his money back.
Now, your guy, Paul Manafort, is going on trial, right?
Yes.
Now, are you still in contact with him? Like, do you still have a relationship with him? Because you guys
we're still certainly friends.
Thick as thieves, yeah.
He was an usher at my wedding. Thick as thieves is not exactly the terminology.
I didn't mean it. Yeah. No pun intended.
I just, I think every American should be concerned about the idea that they can put you in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day prior to you being convicted of any crime.
Seems like torture.
It seems like a violation of your First Amendment rights.
Why is he in solitary?
It is alleged that he was involved in witness tampering. The government can't monitor him? Of course they can.
Paul, you think he would tamper witnesses?
His lawyer says the case is ridiculous. He's pretty savvy, and he knows he's being watched, so why would he go do that?
Do you think that there's, based on the world, that you've seen all this stuff happen? I'm not asking you to imply guilt on anybody, but do you think that there's a possibility that some of these people that are usually pretty savvy are starting to panic because the house of cards, to forgive a terrible expression, is kind of starting to fall down? Collapse, or no?
I understand the concept.
Meaning, would he act in a way that is out of character? Like, would he do something that irresponsible?
Right. Are smart people panicking because all of a sudden they see somebody go to jail and they're like, oh.
It's important to note that there's still none of the charges against him relate to Trump or the Trump campaign. None. So this is not an example of Russian collusion, so to speak.
Right.
And he'll have his day in court. The pressure on him is to plead guilty. They don't want to go to trial. And the reason they don't want to go to trial is because it will reveal that he, like Carter Page, was under government surveillance in an illegal, unconstitutional warrant.
I see. So
there's three people in this category. The other one is sitting here, according to the New York Times.
January
20th, 2017, page 1, the New York Times says, Page, Manafort, and Stone were subject to FISA warrants. A FISA warrant can only be issued on an American citizen if you're actively involved in espionage on behalf of a foreign government against the United States. I certainly wasn't. Manafort wasn't. And I don't believe Page was. So these FISA warrants were used for political reasons. This is 10 times worse than Watergate.
Are you nervous that it's going to get, I'm not going to say worse for you, but get more financially involved? Where you
nervous would be the wrong room. I don't get nervous. I make other people nervous. This is going to cost a fortune. This will be the battle of all time. Again, coming up empty-handed in terms of Russian collusion or WikiLeaks collaboration or this nonsense regarding Podesta's devastatingly embarrassing emails. Could a special prosecutor go out and conjure up some other offense? Sure. I do think people will see through it. They will see that this is a vendetta, and I'm being persecuted for my support of Trump.
Why, if you're innocent, I have no reason to believe you're not. You've told us many times, and you've kind of unshakably told us the same things every time you've come in. Why do they have such a hard-on for getting you?
Well, I wrote a book called The Clintons' War on Women.
Okay, they don't like that.
Because I spent most of the campaign punking liberals and Democrats on my Twitter feed, which was very successful.
Do you miss being on Twitter?
Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. I have a lot of respect for Maggie Haberman of the New York Times. She announced about a week ago she was leaving it because it's just become a mud fight. It's it's all become debased personal.
Were you involved in a mud fight?
Yeah. You didn't help to deter it from becoming a mud fight.
I think I have a turn of phrase. There's nothing wrong with being colorful. By the way,
especially if the color is brown, like mud.
I actually admit that I said things on Twitter that I regretted, and I apologize for them.
Were you drinking or anything, or like were you just?
I had a couple what you call the 2 martini tweets.
Yeah, a couple of cocktails. Who's counting?
So for example, did I say that Ana Navarro of CNN was borderline retarded? Yes. Do I regret that or retract it? No.
You don't?
I do not.
Even with the R word in there?
I do not.
We don't do the R word anymore. That's a thing.
I understand, but...
do you think that that's true, what you said?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Let me ask you, a guy like...
Wow.
You said a lot of things that upset people.
What are you basing that on?
This is having met her.
I see. Okay.
You know what I really don't like?
Tell me.
The way she abuses little people. Mm-hmm. So who do you
mean,
hear
like
it from?
Tiny, like
the makeup people, the hair people, the gaffers, the technicians. Talk to anybody who works at CNN, and they'll say she's a diva. She treats them like they're garbage. These people work too.
Roger, when you send out a tweet, you're a guy who really doesn't. You've said a lot of things that upset people, and you don't seem to care. At what point do you realize, like, oh, okay, that one's a problem? Like, is there somebody in your life who calls you and you go, oh, when that person tells me, that's a problem?
The wife is a pretty good arbiter of these things, but, I don't think anybody among us is perfect and doesn't make mistake. So I look at the tweet and I say, well, somebody lag this over to Media Matters America so they can twist it.
Now, the president also, this is what I want to say about President Trump.
We got this whole article for Media Matters about all your lies.
I could rip it apart line by line, but why bother?
Right. I want to ask how many pages. It's so long. Right. It's Media Matters. Right. They just did
David
a whole
Brock,
article.
The guy's a phony. Half that stuff I never said. It's just, but once it's on the internet, you see it becomes a factoid. That's fake news.
I see.
Who's the guy in the president's life? Because after the Putin press conference, he comes back and he's very, very good at staying by his points and not allowing the criticism to make him reverse himself. But he did reverse himself when he came back. And I'm like, who is it in his life that can call him and say, look, that was incorrect? Like, everyone has to have a person that they value like that, who, like, when that person tells you something, you hear it.
He's very much his own man. And although I still think that he seeks a lot of advice from a broad cross-section of people, he works the phone like no president since LBJ, constantly on the phone. He is also marches very much to his own drummer. So just because he solicits your advice doesn't mean he will take it. The only person in his life who I think meets that criteria is Melania.
Really?
Yes.
His wife?
Yes, she's very influential. She very, 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 very rarely, to my knowledge, weighs in on political matters. It's not her thing. But she'll also be terribly blunt.
My theory, and I have no idea, you'd know better than me, is that she does not like him very much. And is very miserable being the first lady. That's just what her body language says to me.
I don't think she ever wanted him to run for president. Mm-hmm. She thought it was something he had to get out of his system because he felt strongly about.
Just being the president, just get it out of your system.
I just got to do it. I think she thought he would lose.
Right.
It was an improbable victory. The odds were overwhelmingly against him. That was the conventional wisdom.
The polls, too.
She was supportive of the campaign. She's been supportive of his presidency. But I don't think she wanted to move to Washington. I don't think she wanted to take Barron out of school. I think she liked her life in New York. So I think she's bearing this. This is not what she wanted. But
now, if a guy like Trump, who, like, he has an ego, I think even you could admit that.
Really?
Does he resent it all that his wife would think that you're not going to win? Because I would imagine that Donald thought he was going to win. Because
see, I've heard he didn't think he was going to win. I've heard that he felt like at one point maybe began to believe it, but I'd heard that he thought that, like, there's no way this is going to happen.
I think it's the other way around. In other words, I think he pretty consistently thought that he would win. I think his confidence that he could win grew, mostly on the basis of anecdotal information. You go to Michigan for a campaign rally and 30,000 people show up, and Hillary has a rally and 200 people show up. It's an indicator of something.
Then does he get upset that his wife doesn't think he's going to win?
No, because I think at the very end, when you had the New York Times statistician saying there's a 90% chance of a Hillary victory. I think at the very end, he had a note of caution where he said to his wife, look, I don't know how this is going to go. We could win, we could lose. You have to be ready for both. So I think for an episecond, his confidence may have been
waned,
shaken, because all the pundits, all the experts are saying you can't win. But generally speaking, I think this idea that he didn't want to win is completely false.
Do you think it hurts him that the New York Times has such a hatred for him? I mean, again, he's a New York guy, and the New York...
No, I think it helps him because people hate the New York Times.
So you don't think it bothers him on a personal level?
Arrogant, elitist. Yeah. I mean, Trump voters are reading the New York Post.
Yeah.
And the Daily News.
Well, the Daily News is in trouble, too.
Oh, they laid off a bunch of
half
people.
Their workforce.
Tons of people, yeah.
Well, this is the beauty of Twitter. Twitter for Trump is like owning a newspaper without the debt.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Mort Zuckerman should sell the Daily News and get himself a Twitter account. Be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, that is true. And plus, we want to read the paper. It's like, all right, I want to hear a news that is a day old and already 24 hours irrelevant. Reading the paper just doesn't feel the same anymore.
Also, they don't, because the Daily News attempts in their editorial page and in their coverage to seem like the New York Times. That niche is felled. Snotty, elitist, liberal, we already got that area covered.
Right.
You know, the Daily News was traditionally the working people's party newspaper. And they have kind of lost their way. The Post has filled that gap.
Let me ask you some of the stuff about this Media Matters article, because I'm very curious about it.
Now, do you back this article or no?
The article is called Roger Stone has lied or contradicted himself regarding Russia probe matters on countless occasions. Okay, how about this one?
Roger just gave me a paper cut.
Did you have a meeting with a Russian national about the Trump campaign?
I had a meeting with an FBI informant who was sent in to compromise me on May 16th. Yes, I've been very clear about that.
Did you earlier say that you never had any contact with any Russians?
Yes, because I admitted that the meeting that was about 20 minutes long, I didn't remember. The guy's name was Greenberg, by the way, not exactly a Russian name. So I recalled this only when the special counsel's office brought it up with Michael Caputo. Let's look at the facts. They send me a guy who's a Russian national, but he's in the country on an informant's visa. He's a violent criminal who did time for gun crimes in Russia, and he's got 9 such visas. He comes to me and through a friend and says, I have information on Hillary Clinton that could be very damaging, and you can have it for $2 million.
You pay him?
I said, I don't have $2 million. See Jim and Sam. Maybe they've got the money.
I put our resources together.
I don't have $2 million, but even if I did, I wouldn't buy information from you. And he laughs and says to me, it's not your money I want. It's Trump's money. No, I think the House Intelligence Committee is very anxious now to figure out who was Mr. Greenberg? Did Peter Strzok send him? He's undeniably an FBI
How could you forget
informant.
about that meeting, though? That's such like a scandalous meeting.
My life is rather busy, and a presidential campaign is all-consuming.
But wouldn't that be one of those things that's stuck in the back of your mind? Like, I know there's information.
No, because people come to you all the time with something they want to tell you, something they want to sell you, something they want to give you. If you just tell Trump to say this, he'll win. I mean, so
that conversation is not as atypical for you as it might feel for some of us.
I was not told prior to meeting him he was a Russian national. Right. When I met with him, he had a thick Eastern European accent, and asked him where he came from.
So he didn't tell you that he was a Russian national?
The important thing that you won't find in the phony Media Matters article is nothing improper or illegal happens at the meeting or as a result of the meeting. So what reason would I have to dissemble or forget to have it? I just forgot.
How about...
And I updated my testimony in a letter from my attorneys.
How about the claim that you at one point said, because you've said, 100 times, I feel like every time you've been on, we've asked you about Julian Assange, and 100 times you've explained it, and it's been pretty consistent. But what about this other claim that at one point you said you had a high-ranking mutual friend?
Yes.
That person became somebody you communicated with Julian Assange through?
Yes.
That's true.
Well, through who I communicated with WikiLeaks through. Yes, that is true, and I testified to that effect under oath before the House Intelligence Committee.
Okay, so while you didn't speak directly to WikiLeaks,
correct,
you spoke through person.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Now we're getting somewhere, Ron. Now I'm starting to understand.
This is kind of falls under the tactic of old news. Look, this is something that is.
This has been out there. You're saying.
Well, there's a narrative here. Stone worked with the Russians to hack the DNC. Then he took the material, which he got from the Russians, and he gave it to A, Julian Assange, B, WikiLeaks, C, Donald Trump, or D, the Trump campaign. It's completely false. I notice it's an article of faith because of the accuracy of my predictions on Twitter and on The Circus with HBO. But there's just no evidence to prove. Not an iota of that can be proved. Not a bit of it.
What did you and WikiLeaks talk about through that guy?
I asked them for. Well, let's back up. Assange said on June 1st on CNN that he had a treasure trove of information on Hillary that he would drop.
And you're like, dope.
She said just devastating information.
Fabulous.
I asked my friend 2 questions. Is it true? And when do you think this might happen? He said, yes, evidently it is true, and I'm told October 1st.
Now, if you had asked, what is the information, would that be considered an inappropriate question?
I don't think he would have known, and I don't think they would have told you, because they're not going to leak their own story in advance.
No, but I mean, would that question have been considered more inappropriate than the other two? Like, oh, now you're actually seeking information.
Again, me and 1,000 other journalists, it's not a crime to talk to Julian Assange or WikiLeaks. They do the same thing the New York Times does. But I had no advance notice of the source or content of their disclosures, only that they were coming, and I was told October 1st. In the end, they came a little later than that.
So how are they trying to tie you in with it because you asked 2 questions?
Because it is alleged that Assange is a Russian asset, which he's not. So they need to prove that in court first. Here's how the intelligence services work. They say something over and over and over again, and they think that makes it a fact. I'll give you an example. Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy, and he acted alone.
I heard that.
Agree.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not true. The point is you can just keep saying it.
Turn it into fact.
Right. It becomes a factoid. Hey. So the idea that Assange works for the Russians, he denies it, and they haven't proved it. When the intelligence services tell you something is their assessment, that's when your bullshit detector should go off. That means they don't know anything.
Right, that's not a fact.
That's what they want you to think, or that's what they think.
However, on a side note, I do have to read your book because I always believed in conspiracy, and now I do think Oswald acted alone. But I have to read your book.
Definitely not.
Yeah, you need.
Okay.
You
the
need
man
to see
who
the
killed
evidence.
Kennedy, the case against LBJ, it will blow your mind.
Okay.
What do you think of this Who is America show? Sacha Baron Cohen's new show on Showtime. It's really ruffling a lot of feathers with some of your peers.
It's certainly gotten enough coverage.
A lot of coverage.
It is funny, though.
Well, what it shows me is that certain conservatives are so ignorant of the pop culture that they couldn't figure out they were being set up.
So were you at all insulted that you were not asked to be on the show?
I don't think I would have gone for it.
You don't think they could have gotten
They probably knew they couldn't get him.
No. In fact,
how great would it be if he doesn't?
I might dress up in an outfit and see if I can punk him. You know?
Yeah.
No, but I mean,
how wonderful though would it be for all of us if like Roger's saying this now and doesn't realize that he already did the show and he pops up on like episode 6 or something.
No, it's interesting to me that the only guy who they kind of failed to entrap was Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Which one?
From Florida. And it's because he's cognizant of the pop culture. He figured it out in about 10 seconds.
Did they get
Judge Roy Moore? Baron Cohen? Who's that boy? I don't know that boy. I mean, he has no clue.
They nail Roy Moore. Bernie Sanders did not know he was on a Sacha Baron Cohen show.
Sure,
he didn't take the bait, but he didn't throw him out. Like that guy in the gun store. Like he walked in and tried to do this skit in the gun store, and there's
like, "You're Borat."
Surveillance footage. Yeah, the guy goes, "You're Borat. Get out of here."
Some guys are they don't know they're being trolled, but they're just media savvy enough to know, like, no, like the fact that a guy would drop the N-bomb and then put his ass down when there's a camera in the room, regardless of who they say it's for, it's crazy.
Moron.
But do you think it's a funny show?
I haven't seen the show yet, so I can't.
Have you seen that scene of him with his hiney out?
Only read about it.
It's very funny.
Very, very funny.
To watch that it's an elected official with his hiney out.
We watched
that. He's not an elected official anymore.
No, he's not.
But he had lost the primary anyway, so he wasn't going to be around much longer.
But he decided not to stick around any longer.
He said he was going to, and then somebody, when the governor pins a tweet that you're despicable, you're probably like, all right. Oh, by the way, what do you think of Sheldon Silver going to jail for 7 years?
I was not surprised that he was reconvicted.
He's a guy that was fucking the UFC for a long time, so I'm happy to see him.
Albany is a cesspool. I mean, I've worked in 35 roughly of the 50 states. This is the single most corrupt, mismanaged state in the country, without any question.
Why?
It's hard to understand. I think that the multiple party thing is where it starts. In other words, the fact that you can be the nominee of the Republican and Conservative Party or the Democrat and the Working Families Party, that opens the door to all kinds of horse trading, which I just think it's a bad idea. Even though I love the New York State Conservative Party, I also love my libertarians out there. But I think the cross-endorsement thing's a bad idea. If they want to run their own candidates, they should. But running the same candidate as the major parties, that opens a door, I think, to a lot of horse trading. Also, it's an incredibly blue state. So lack of competition breeds contempt and arrogance and corruption. When one party's in charge for too long, regardless of which party it is, they get arrogant and they get sloppy.
Yep. Whether or not you're guilty. Have you thought about this? Because we've seen so many of these documentaries, right, where people who they're not guilty, they go to jail anyway. Once you get accused of a crime, once you're on trial, there's always that risk, right? Have you given any thought to the idea that there's this risk that you might end up in jail? Look
for my new book, Framed, the Roger Stone story.
So you'll turn it into an opportunity.
Look, I think I've been very clear. The people keep saying to me, do you expect to be indicted? No, but I could be framed. I could be railroaded. I certainly won't go quietly. Go look up the Abby Hoffman trial during the Vietnam War, and you get some idea what this will be like.
Are people, like with J. Edgar Hoover, people were scared. They were almost more scared of him dead than alive because of all the files he had. They didn't know where everything was kept. They didn't know what he had told to who. Now, do you think people have the same concerns about you, that you know so much about so many people that a lot of people would be nervous?
First of all, let's be completely clear. I've never been a religious right conservative. I've never been a moral majority conservative. I'm a freak.
Oh, yeah, you are.
I'm a very naughty boy, if you don't mind me saying so.
I'm a firm believer in the use of medicinal marijuana.
You like that?
But I'm not claiming to be a purist. See, the crime, I think, is hypocrisy. I never had a problem with Spitzer going to call girls. Just don't bust other guys for going to call girls while you're doing it. It's not. Right. In other words, prostitution, in my view, should be legal, licensed by the state, with a review from the health board, maybe a little tax, as opposed to being underground where women get beat up and where women are being held against their will and so on. So my private life, which FBI agents seem to be very centered on. In other words, at least now 10 of my current or former associates or employees have been questioned by the FBI. What's the relevance of, does he drink? Does he smoke marijuana? Or does he have girlfriends? How does he get along with his wife? They show them pictures of Kristen Davis's baby and say, is this Roger Stone's baby?
Because they want to embarrass you.
Oh, yeah, that was a rumor that was going around for a while, that Kristen's son was his son.
But it's just wild, because I feel like the Roger Stone personal life sort of, this is what he's really up to. That was like decades ago. Like that was already, we did that. It seems like when you look at the history of Roger Stone, your personal life being exposed and the swinger stuff coming out and all that stuff kind of created the version of Roger Stone that we see today. It strikes me as difficult to embarrass you using details of your personal life unless you've got some kind of insane skeletons that we don't already know about.
I think I've been very clear when it comes to sex. I'm trisexual. I've tried it all.
Yes, you have.
What have you tried that you didn't like?
We won't get into it.
All right. Can you say something that rhymes with it?
Variety is the spice of life.
Now, are you still like that as a
I'm a bit older and wiser now, but I was much wilder in my younger days. But
still a freak, though, even as a gentleman.
I never claimed to be otherwise, is the point. And it's the hypocrisy that gets you.
Yeah.
Right, if you pretend to be something and clean cut and you're attacking people for something bigger.
So the sheriff of Wall Street was, breaking the law. That was his problem. It was hypocrisy.
Well, listen, if you want to help Kristen Davis, who's getting roped into all this nonsense, it sounds like to me, KristenDavisLegalFund.com is the place that you can go. Back in the day, she did the radio show a bunch. Yep. Good lady. And it does seem like she just, it doesn't, regardless of what you think of Rogers, a lot of you think he's, 100% what he says is true. Some of you guys, I see it on Twitter, think that he's lying. Regardless of all that, I think we can all agree that, Kristen Davis doesn't have anything to do with any of this.
No, she does not. So you see if you can support Kristen because she's already gone to jail for something. She has nothing to do with this.
That's really the burden here. In other words, between the House and the Senate Intelligence Committee investigations, the Senate Judiciary Committee investigations, being sued by the DNC. I was being sued by some Obama front, but that suit got dismissed because they couldn't prove the Russians hacked the DNC and gave me anything. My legal fees are going to skyrocket well beyond $1 million. You can go online, you'll find a story that says I'm worth $20 million. David Brock, I think, placed that one too. It's not true. Nice. I'm not wealthy. This threatens to destroy my family.
Well, I hope it doesn't.
Well, me too.
Everybody go out and buy that Stone's Rules book.
You can go to stonedefensefund.com. Have had to set up a legal defense fund.
You have.
It's administered by one of my lawyers. And my new book, which I brought you guys copies of, Stone's Rules.
Fabulous.
You guys can avoid the fashion advice, but everything else in here.
We certainly will.
Yes. Well, thank you, Roger Stone. We're out of time.
Yeah, it's always good seeing you.
Good to be here.
We'll see you all tomorrow.
Goodbye.